morning, everyone. Today we have the great pleasure of hosting Alyssa Stein, and Alyssa is a licensed psychotherapist. She's been working in the field for about 20 years, and one of her areas of expertise is teens and adolescents and young adults and helping them through various life transitions. So she brings a lot of knowledge and wisdom and also personal wisdom to this subject. She has two students in college, two of her children in college and one in high school. So she's been down this road before. She has a lot to offer, but had asked specifically that we sort of gather in a way that will allow us to have a lot of conversation today. So please, bring your questions, ask your questions, and we will let her take it from here.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. So I have a packet, and on the second page of the packet, I have a slight, is it? Oh yeah, second page of I have a slight outline. The rest of the packet is stuff for you to read outside of here. So I'd like to invite you to not go through the packet while we're talking. If you're someone who feels like that is too tempting, there will be plenty up here for you after. So I'm going to hand it out, and I left some spaces in the outline if you want to take notes, but I'm hoping there will not be a lot of flipping through and reading the articles that I've given you for later. They are great articles. They are worth reading, but if it could happen after. So actually, we're going to start with opening the very first page with lots of words. I just want everyone to focus on that a minute. This page, right? Does everyone have this page? Yeah. So obviously just random words about the college experience. I'm just wondering, actually before I kind of more formally start, let me just say, I would like this to be a really casual thing. I'm actually not even that comfortable here with this table, but I'll do it, whatever. I kind of wish I was cross-legged in my sweatpants, but here I am. I really want this to be an open conversation. My understanding is that you're all senior parents. Is that correct? You're all senior parents? And so you're all in the same boat in that you're in the same station of life, but each of your experiences is very individual because your kids are very individual and your families are very individual. So I invite this to be an open conversation. You can interrupt me. This is not formal. All good. So as everyone is looking at this list, just notice what word jumps at you the most, and not because it's big. What word in your mind as you read this is you're like, ugh. Right, confusion is roommate. What else? What are other words for people that just jump out? Trepidation, anxiety. Yep. Anything else? Laundry. The practical stuff is real. Yep. Anything else? Anyone see anything else? Should I text? Should I call? Those are big questions that lots of people have. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. So whatever. This is just a cute little thing I made. You may have your own words come up that you want to add. And so the next page is just this very informal outline of things I'm going to talk about. There's a space for notes if you want to take notes in some. And then the rest of the packet is for you to read on your own at another time. I do want to say, actually, two things before I really kind of dive into the information. Some people asked, somebody, maybe Michelle, that when we were communicating, said that people wanted information on how we can legally get information exchanged with our children once they're 18. I can really speak to that from a parent. I am not that well versed as a professional, but I will tell you that in the back of your packet is a model form for disclosure for parents of dependent students and a consent form for disclosure to parents. So these are forms that are going to be presented to you when your child enrolls in the school. There's going to be something that's presented through your kid's portal, and maybe you're going to get a portal, it depends on the school, where you can have your kid sign that they give permission before they even go to school. And I would recommend that right off the bat. Before your kids go to school, have them sign that you're allowed to know their grades, that you're allowed to be in touch with the school on their behalf. It's pretty simple, all schools do it. So this is just a model of the form. There is a website at the very bottom of this outline, the jedfoundation.org. It is a well of incredible information for all kinds of things that you can look at and see. One of the things that they have on there that I really love is what should you expect from your child with regard to self-care when they go to college. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, but just a lot of good checklists, very practical information presented in a very practical way. There's a place for parents, there's a place for students. It's a really good, well-organized website that a lot of people don't know about, so you can go there and get a ton of information. Okay, so this is a time of transition for everybody in your family, for you personally. If there are two spouses, well, it doesn't matter if two spouses, if two parents live in the home or not, for both parents, for siblings in the home, in some cases for grandparents. I'm curious, how many folks here have their first child going off to school? How many have their second? Okay, great. So you guys are also good participants in this, and you should jump in, and any of your experiences you should tell us about. So certainly there's a change in family dynamics when your kid goes to school. Obviously, there's someone that leaves the house, and sometimes two people that leave the house. Some of you have twins, or maybe some of you have triplets. So one or a few people leave the house. And that certainly changes life at home, in the routine, in the energy. It changes the dynamic. If the parents are married, it changes the dynamic of the marriage. It changes the dynamic of the sibling relationship, and it often changes how the family functions. And so that's something to really think about as you are thinking about your child going off to school. What will that look like? And to have conversations with the other parent, if they're in the home, about just what will this look like and what can we expect and what are our wishes about how next year will look, what could we change now that our son's going off to school and our daughter's 3 years behind. Could the routine be different in a way that would be helpful to us? How can we make the most of the situation? Also really important to think about the impact of siblings. Some siblings are jumping for joy as their sibling heads off to school, and other siblings are very bereft. They have lost their other half, they've lost their playmate. It can be a tremendous loss for them. And the important thing is to really make space in the home for those conversations. I've worked with some families where I've had a sibling say they didn't want to talk about that they were sad that their older brother or sister left because they could see their parents were so upset, which is not a great dynamic, right? We don't want our kids protecting us in that way. We want there to be space for both. We want there to be space that the parent can say, this is sad. I'm really excited, but I'm also sad at the same time, and that makes sense. We can be both of those things. And that's a really important idea just in life. Let me just pause there a second. The and. Two things can be happening at the exact same time. You can be super excited that your kid is leaving, and you can feel tremendous loss that your kid is leaving. And the siblings can feel it too. It can happen at the same time. And making space for both of those things is a very healthy thing to occur in your family. Just because, isn't that so much of what life is, right? I'm really excited about this new job, and I'm really worried at the same time. I'm really thrilled that I'm going to be taking this hard class, and I'm anxious, right? Like this idea that there is room for lots of different emotions. And if there's ever a time for there to need to be space for lots of different emotions, this is the time. Lots of different emotions in the family. And certainly the marriage changes also depending on if it's your last kid leaving, even if it's your first kid leaving and there's two kids leaving. It's just a different marital dynamic when the family dynamic change, which is very important that people pay attention to. I work with a lot of couples. I would say 50%, maybe 60% of my practice at this point is couples. And there are a lot of changes that are spoken and unspoken when the family dynamic starts to shift. Sometimes when a marriage is fine enough, it's a little not fine enough when one kid has left. And that doesn't mean it's in trouble. It doesn't mean anybody needs to get separated or divorced. It means that it feels different. And you got to look at that too. So one of the things that I think is very important for parents to think about, actually before I say that, any questions right now? Anything anybody wants to jump in with? Okay. Is setting expectations for yourself and for your children about various topics. So I like to think about things in terms of content and context. So the content, you'll see in the outline, I talk about academic expectations, social expectations, emotional expectations, self-care, financial expectations, social media, right? So that's content. The context is, how do we talk about this? Is there space in our family for these conversations? Just giving your kids money and never having a conversation about the expectation of how it's going to be spent, what they can spend and not spend on, is missing a really important layer of conversation. The context is very important, the way the information is shared. The context is, how do you make space for your kid to call you and talk about their worry about their grades? That's context, which is different than the content, which is classes and grades. That's kind of your job. You're supposed to go to school. But what are our expectations? Kids go to college, and their job is supposed to be that they go to school. Different families have different expectations for the kids with the grades. I've worked with some families that say, well, we're not paying for any credit below a B. Some kids go into college and say, you know what, grades don't matter at all. I can get C's and D's as long as I get the credit. That's all that matters. And that is a conversation for you as a family to have about what matters to you. And I would say it's a balance. You do not want to be hyper-focused on grades. That's not, obviously you want your kids to go to class, you want your kids to participate and do the work, but you don't want them to have to start running out of the gate with tremendous pressure, because there is already so much other pressure at school. Will I get along with my roommate? Will the people on the floor like me? Will I have someone to sit with at meals? What clubs am I going to join? What am I going to do on weekends? There's a lot of kind of dual negotiating happening at the exact same time in a way that your kids have not been challenged to do. And, by the way, they've just gone away from home, and they're in charge of all their laundry, sheets, making sure that they get up in time to go to their class, whatever, everybody's different on that. Some kids are very independent at this stage, some kids not so much, but there are a lot of balls in the air for these kids. And so just to recognize that it's going to take them a bit of time to get their bearings. Sometimes, I've worked with families where you have a kid that is a rock star, maybe a social rock star, an academic rock star in high school, and that kid, you have, college is going to be so easy. They're amazing. They're incredible. Guess what? One of my favorite phrases is that man plans and the universe laughs, right? Like, that kid may go and really struggle because they kind of had it down to a science in their high school, and now they're in the big bag world with, there's a lot of other people. There's people, teachers they don't know, classes they don't know, the campus they don't know. That kid may struggle. I'll speak personally about one of my kids who kind of struggled end of middle school, early high school. He used to be the kid, people used to say to me, which kid do you worry about? Which kid keeps you up at night? This was the kid that kept me up at night, this one of my kids, who actually became a rock star in college. If someone said to me, would you have predicted that? I would have said no, definitely not. And he literally is an absolute rock star, and his rock star high school sister has struggled. So we just don't know. We just don't know. Our kids are always changing and growing, and the most important thing is to have an open line of communication with them so that there can just be open communication and checking in, and to be a resource and guide for them, that you're available to them if they need you. What gets in the way of that is if there's tremendous expectations from parents. So let's just jump down a little bit to these phrases that are really kind of media phrases of helicopter, snow plowing, parenting. I don't know how much everyone has read about that, but the helicopter parent is the parent that's always hovering around. The newest phrase in the media is the snow plow parent. That parent plows everything away for the kids. You know, we've just seen a little bit of this in this recent college scandal. Talk about snow plowing, you know, and that really does a huge disservice to the kids. If your kids are not learning how to do their own laundry, they're going to struggle in their life because they need clean clothes, right? It's just like a very simple idea. If your kids don't know how to call and make an appointment, sometimes I'll be working with a family and the parents will say, well, you know, he just gets nervous. He doesn't like to call and make that appointment with the teacher, so I just email. So it sounds initially like you're trying to do this kind thing. You're actually setting your kid up for failure because your kid is not learning that skill. Okay, you're uncomfortable. You can be uncomfortable and you can still make the call. You can feel weird and you can still send an email. Both those things can be true. But if we don't teach our kids to reach out and build the muscle of independence, they are not going to learn it. I mean, the hope is that eventually they're going to learn it, but if you want them to be prepared for college, it is this idea of being their own advocate, thinking, having critical thinking skills, like, okay, so I'm struggling in this class. What's the smart thing for me to do? I think I need to meet with the teacher. How do I meet with the teacher? Oh, I think it's on the syllabus. I need to look up the email. Let them figure that out. That's not to say you don't say, well, hey, did you look on the syllabus for the teacher's email? That's great. Guide them. Do not email for them. I can't tell you how many kids I have heard about that are Google Docking their papers to their parents. I'm sure you guys have heard this. Has anyone heard that? They are saving their papers. I can't get over it. I just want to say to the parents, how do you have the time for this? Like, didn't you do this already? Parents who are staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning with their freaking out kids doing their papers. And the teachers don't know. These teachers, the professors have no idea, right? The parents Google Doc it up. The kid saves it, prints it. And, you know, will your kid get a better grade in the class? Yeah. In life? No, not at all. What's going to happen when your kid's working in an environment? They're going to call you from work. Can you hear me? I'm in the filing cabinet. I don't know. I don't know what to do with this document. I don't know. Like, it's just not teaching your kids in a way that prepares them. And so that, and this is like, this can be tough love to say to your kid, go to the writing center. I don't know. Or I have a job. I have a life. You have other siblings. I actually want to go to bed. You know, not being so available. So really thinking about what is your wish for your child. And maybe your kid has been very dependent, and this has been a year where they've become less dependent, and you know you can't fully throw them into the water. You know that they're going to need a little bit of hand-holding. Okay, a little bit. But I think part of what I see is that parents do not take responsibility for their own overreaching behavior. And it really impacts their children tremendously. The kids feel then that they cannot fly. I've had kids come back to me that I've worked with over years. They'll come back and they'll say, I wish my parents didn't help me so much because now I'm behind. I see my friends, whether it's that I have friends that get up on time and have this whole day and I haven't even moved and it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It didn't even occur to me to set my alarm on a Saturday and get work done. It didn't even enter my mind that I should be at the library by 11. So these are skills we want our kids to build on their own. So underneath the kinds of parenting, I added my own. And I would say our goal is to be open-hearted, compassionate, confident parents. Open-hearted meaning open and non-judgmental, really open and curious about who is our kid and what do they want, and how much of what we are impressing upon them is what's good for them, and how much is what's good for us. I have had so many conversations with families about parents that want their kids to go to their alma mater. I'm sure you guys have seen this. To the point that the kid can't even think straight about if that is a good school or not. It's just like in their blood. From like the minute they were getting sippy cups, that school was in their blood, that was what was expected to them. And they have grown up with this legacy, and they actually, I work with a family this year, the kid's failing out. And actually, the kid's very smart and capable. It just was never the right school to begin with for them. There was never a real thought about who is this kid and what is right for them. So that's really important. So open-hearted, really thoughtful, who's my kid, really curious, and confident, meaning confidence in yourself and confidence in your kid. It's funny, when I was creating this packet, I was thinking, like, what can I put in there for them to read? I put some things for you to read. But I really think the best thing is if you can go inside yourself and think about, who is my kid and what do they need and how do I know them? Rather than looking for a ton of advice. There's a lot of good structural advice, and I'm going to try to give you some today. But I can't give you specific advice about your kid because I don't know your kid. You guys know your kids. You're the experts on your kids. And for you to really think into yourself in a very quiet, thoughtful way, who is my kid? If your kid has never been a huge social kid, they've got friends, and suddenly wants to go to a rah-rah sorority fraternity school, there should be like that's kind of interesting choice. It's not how I saw that. And I would say to get curious. I mean, we're at a time, I would guess, where everybody's applied. So this is like an interest, But to just be thoughtful, if your kid's still making a decision, to help them think about how they imagine their life. It shouldn't just be about what's the best school. I will, again, I'll share something personal. One of my kids had excellent grades and is academically pretty talented, but cannot handle a high amount of stress. She herself is a stress case. And I originally started with looking at much higher level schools for her where she probably could have gotten in. And she herself, after we visited one campus that she really loved, she said, you know what, it's calm and peaceful there, and that's what's good for me. And I struggled. I was like, well, we'll see if it's right for you. She's like, nope, it's actually right for me. I was like, well, it's the first place you're looking. She's like, I don't actually have to look anymore. And I was like, and I saw her at a much more rigorous school. I had to do a little internal work on myself to get myself on the line. And she was right. She was right. Because even in that environment, she gets herself very stressed out. So she would have been a nightmare at one of these much harder academic schools. So it was me listening to her and not following, I guess, my own ego, probably, about what I wanted for her. And she was exactly on the money. So I think us really paying attention to what is the best for our kid versus like what looks good on paper, what's going to get you the best job, which I don't know that any of that is real anyway. Really what's going to be the next best chapter for your child and their experience. If you put a kid into a very high stress school and the next 4 years of their life is going to be a stressful, chaotic mess, that is good for nobody. That's not good for you, that's not good for your other children, and that's certainly not good for your college kid. It's just not worth it. I often think that mental health is the most important thing here because you cannot have good quality learning and therefore have success grade-wise if you are not having good mental health. You can't. You can't take in the information. There's too much to manage. And as I said earlier, at the same time these kids are managing grades, they're trying to figure out, all right, okay, there's drinking at this party. Should I go to this party? I'm anxious about the drinking, but I want to be included. Oh my God, now there's pot. How am I going to handle that? They have so much to manage. So I think just really setting expectations. So this idea of being open-hearted and compassionate is to try to have as much of an open conversation with your kids about everything. I think it's really important to be available, if you can, to talk about parties, to talk about sex, to talk about friends, to talk about all of it. Because the kids are all trying to figure it out. And we are more experienced people. We all are, right? We all have the wisdom of years behind us. And for them to be able to maybe have a conversation with you, and for you to for sure have a conversation with them, okay, there's going to be some parties. Let's talk about that. Obviously, all your kids here have had different experiences here with parties. Have they, haven't they? Some kids probably have a lot of experiences, some kids not so much. I will tell you that with my kids, and I recommend to other parents, have an actual conversation about how to teach your kids to attend a party without getting drunk. So, if you look up, I don't have it in front of me, that red Solo cup, that actually kind of triggers me, I hate it, there are markers on that cup, and those markers equal amounts of alcohol. This is like a great little piece of information. So the first marker, I might get this off. You have to look it up. And if you can't find it, let me know and I'll send it to you. But I've learned this through someone who does drug and alcohol education. The first marker, I believe, is 1 shot. So if you are teaching your kids, you have to be smart. If you're going to have a drink, you don't pour past this. I think there's another marker on the Solo cup that is the equivalent of like, what is a glass of wine or beer? You can teach this to your kids, and you can teach your kids, by the way, you can just have seltzer and cranberry and nobody knows. Just hold a Solo cup with water. No one knows. And if someone says, dude, what are you drinking? You know, the usual. You just teach your kids literally how to play it. Because a lot of these kids who are drinking a ton don't necessarily want to be. They just want to be included and part of the pack. And kids can buy their own non-alcoholic beer and put it on the side. And if they're going to drink, the goal is for them to do it responsibly. I think that should be an expectation. This is me personally. Lots of people have different feelings about that. And I am open to that conversation right now. But I think that lots of parents will go, well, oh, you know, it's college. This is what you do in college. I don't think it's a good idea. And I think if that's your perspective, that is what your kids will do. They will think that it is just fine. And the amount of binge drinking and marijuana use on campus is tremendous. And it's just unnecessary. And the current recommendations about drug and alcohol use is not to just say no. It is to put it off till their brains are older, till they are more mature, until they can make wiser decisions. So is your kid going to probably try something? Probably. But the decisions that they make at 21 are going to be different than the decisions they make at 18. So really teaching them what's going to happen when you walk into this party and there's all this stuff going on. You know, with my kids, I said, never drink the punch. Never, ever, ever drink the punch. With both of my kids, always watch where your drink is, not just my girls, my son too. Have a lid. Get a cup with a lid. And really coming up with creative ideas about how your kids can be included, how they can fit in, how they can feel socially connected, and, again, and take care of themselves and make good choices at the same time. I just want to throw in the amount of sexual assaults that occur with alcohol is outrageous. One of my specialties is trauma. I cannot tell you, I can't even count the amount of sexual assaults, not just women, men, and men who have women and men who have behaved inappropriately because they are under the influence. And they should know that is not an unusual thing to occur. And they should have to be responsible for their behavior. They should not be getting so drunk that they don't know what's happening. They should never be getting so drunk that I don't think anybody at this age should be getting drunk, to be honest. I'm probably not the norm. If they want to experiment with drinking, a little bit of drinking. But they should not be getting so drunk that they have no idea what is going on. I can't say enough how many sexual assaults, how many people over the years I have dealt with who have been raped, assaulted, who have done inappropriate things under the influence. So that's a huge factor as well. Any questions so far? I know I'm like throwing a ton of information out there. I'm just like spewing it, and I don't mean to overwhelm. Tell me, yes.
Well, for my older, my way of helping is a lot of very practical stuff. 2 sets of sheets. If you're sick or just full of coke, whatever, you don't have to go do your laundry right then. So I'm always trying to think of very practical things that is gonna make it easier for them. But there's a lot of those kind of things that you can think about before they go away to school.
Absolutely.
That makes things a lot easier.
Absolutely.
For them once they're there.
Absolutely. And I think that's really important.
There was
The basic practical stuff.
The naked roommate and read that book.
Oh, I don't know it.
Sounds interesting. It's kind of basically saying, you're you and your roommate is very likely going to be very different.
Yeah.
In just very different ways. Like they might walk around the room naked changing where you might be more shy.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So it's not anything like bad or good, it's just how different, even if you're somewhat similar in your friends, a roommate can be very different.
Yes, absolutely. I think the practical stuff is all terrific, and that we should be talking that through. your kid should be part of the purchasing of all the stuff for school. Nobody should be getting it just for their kid without their kid included in it. And quite frankly, your kid should have to fill the shopping cart or go to Bed and Bath, and nothing, that is their responsibility. And to say, well, you need 2 sheets in case of this, let's get you some extra whatever, you're gonna need to do what, you can teach them all kinds of practical things for sure.
Don't use the laundry pods. That were great, but they get caught up in the dry, and then they'll stain, so they ruin a bunch of shirts.
Okay.
They don't open fully, because
Okay.
they might be whatever. And, not having tons of resume always.
Yeah. So, certainly good practical conversation. I think, were there other hands? I feel like there were other, was there someone else? Yes.
We're talking about assault.
Yep.
And I know that the laws are kind of being changed, or something's happening around assault on campus right now. I'm not really sure what is changing.
I don't have the current information about legal stuff on campus, to be honest. I just don't. I mean, my world is pretty the emotional end of it. Sorry. Anyone else right now? So, when you spoke about the roommate, I think having conversations with your kids about what is expected from your roommate. What are some simple conversations you can have about teaching your kid to have that conversation? What's going to make our room function well? One of my kids at freshman year called me to say, I'm so tired, I'm not sleeping well. I said, what's going on? Why aren't you sleeping well? I don't really know. Well, my roommate's kind of playing video games. My roommate's playing video games till like 2 a.m. Like, it didn't even occur to my son to set a boundary. And I said, well, like, what's your going to bed time? You got to kind of speak up and set a boundary. And it was pretty amazing. He just said to the kid, after midnight, I really need the room to be dark so I can go to sleep. If you want to go out in the lounge, you can go out in the lounge. If you're going to be listening to something without light, you can put on headphones. It was a very simple kind of thing that could occur that didn't even occur to my son to do. So this idea of setting boundaries, when are the lights going to, if you come in at 3 a.m, you can't flip on the lights. If you're going to be out partying, please be sensitive when you come in when I'm sleeping. If you're getting up early, please be sensitive if I'm sleeping. Just having conversations about how can this room run well so it's to both of our optimum experience. Whether it be where you hang your towel, if you have smelly shoes, what you're going to do, how you're going to manage these things. And to invite your kid to be their own advocate, to talk about that with their roommate. You're teaching them a great skill. They're going to need it moving forward for living with a partner, having a roommate, sharing desk space. These are all very important skills. Any questions? Yes?
Well, I think it's especially true in Canaan because I don't know how many kids in Canaan actually have to share a room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. It's really important. Yes.
Just a comment. His son's sophomore, his freshman year, and they found him on Facebook, and he's allergic to nuts. And so we never had a conversation about, you can't really have peanuts in the room type of thing. So I know a lot of freshmen now fill out surveys, everything, and I don't know if they put that on there, so that might be a conversation
Yes.
you have to have, and if they're open to, here's my EpiPen, would you use it on, that those kinds of conversations.
Yeah. I think any kind of needs in any special way, whether it's a kid with allergies or a kid with migraines or a kid with celiac, for there to be open conversations about those kinds of things is very important and most helpful up front. I know lots of kids will now do roommates by Facebook, or sometimes live with a friend, and sometimes there can be a built-in expectation about that. And some kids really like the idea of there not being any expectation, and they just see who they get, and they may be friends, they may not be friends, they'll be roommates, and they'll take it from there. And there is something kind of simple about that. Just kind of laying out from the beginning, oh, nice to meet you, this is my stuff, what's your stuff, let's figure it out. Yes?
Do you run into, because I've seen this, through my older child's friends, what do you recommend if a roommate has mental health problems and is kind of burdening the student, and how, how do you deal with that?
I think it's important that student put up a boundary about what they can tolerate and not tolerate.
I mean, beyond saying, go over the student comes.
Right.
Without seeming like you're being mean or.
Right, I
I'm
mean,
sympathetic
that student is
to
there to
their
have a college experience, and if it's impacting their college experience, they need to speak to their RA. That student should not be getting that person awake. That student, if the student is worrying tremendously, they need to talk to the RA. They really need to talk to the RA about it.
Because I think that's hard for the girls to do.
Yeah, it is hard.
Because they say, I don't want to be mean, but I am kind of trying to.
Right, but they can kind of say to the RA, I'm concerned, I feel a little pulled in, could you check in more? They can be a little savvy about how they do it. But there are some kids that fall right into that role of caregiver. Immediately, they like that role. And so you got to watch that. If your kid gets a needy roommate, they could fall, oh, she's my best friend, we're so close, she needs me so much. Not a good scenario. So I think being clear about what their expectations are and what they're expected to do and not do. So let's shift to mental health for a minute. Colleges have greatly improved about mental health support that they offer. I think most college campuses have pretty robust counseling centers, whereas it used to be that they would have one person, maybe part-time, available. My understanding is that now it's actually sometimes hard to get an appointment at the counseling center, and that there are many, many people on staff. I haven't looked at this lately, but what I used to know to be true, it might still be true, is that you get 12 to 15 sessions included in tuition. Some kids are really uncomfortable walking into a counseling center. They will be afraid that someone will see them. And that should not be a reason that your kid does not get mental health support. If that is the case, rather than argue with your kid, if you can do it financially, find them someone else in that town. The college center can give you recommendations. You can call. You're just, the goal would be for your kid to call, but if your kid won't call, you can call, and they will give you local recommendations, and you can also look in local resources. There are therapists everywhere, all over the country, and so lots of therapists in local college towns are used to working with them. But that shouldn't be a deterrent to your kid getting support. So it's there if they're willing to do it in that way, and if not, there's other ways. Yes?
So this is a good entry point, I think. A lot of us have read about situations where children have been in much more trouble than anyone realized, and sometimes even ending in suicide. And what are some of the warning signs a parent could look for if their child isn't communicating any distress?
If your kid is not communicating any distress at all, it's really hard to know. I would say if your kid is suddenly not going to classes, if they seem very disengaged, if they're talking in ways, this is really not about suicide. This is really about that they're struggling emotionally, that they're suddenly talking about things that sound very different than the kid that you knew. If this just doesn't make sense, it's not that easy to figure out. There are a lot of kids that have a relationship with a therapist or counselor in high school, and I would say if your children have that relationship, it might be a good idea that continue. There are lots of therapists that will do FaceTime sessions or phone sessions, and then the kids check in when they come home on breaks, and that's a really nice bridge for the kids. We have a ton of kids in our office that do that with people. In our practice. It's a very helpful tool for them, something that they have that's consistent, a relationship that can continue. But what also you're talking about is communication. So I think it's really important for you as a family to figure out what's your wish for how you're going to communicate. Now, I think this is really important, and there are two ends of this. There are families that hardly communicate, see you on break. There are parents that are texting every hour. I don't think either are great. I think a helpful thing is to maybe have if it doesn't come naturally and organically to your family, then maybe to have a time that every Friday afternoon we touch base, every Sunday we touch base, and there's a family call where the parents and the children can speak, maybe FaceTime, maybe by phone, but we check in. How are things? How's it going? You can say how things are going here. They can say how are things going there. But where you really check in, you're allowed to ask questions. How's this class? How's that class? How's the roommate? How's the food situation? You're allowed to ask those things. It's not going to be good to be asking it every day. I don't think it's a good idea to say, well, what did you eat for breakfast today? You know, you could say, how's it going with the meals? Are you getting to the cafeteria enough? Or do they have enough of choices for you? But not in an overextended way. You want the kids to figure it out. But I do think the idea of regular communication is important so that you know what's going on and so that your kids know that you're there for them. You're there and available to them if they need you. And again, that's a personal conversation that the family needs to have. So I also want to talk a little bit about kind of the transition. So if most of you here have kids that are going to be heading off to college in the fall, the transition of their kind of starting to separate from you is starting, you know, in lots of different ways. That doesn't mean that you change the expectations of what goes on in your home. If it doesn't mean that your rules about being out really late or partying or chores at home or whatever the rules in your family are, they're still part of the family, they live in the house, and there should be an expectation that's appropriate for them, and that should occur when they come home as well. If they are home on Thanksgiving break, that is not liberty to leave their towels all over the place, not clear their dishes, again, based on what the rules are in your family. You know, you don't want to suddenly be like, I know you've never lifted a dish, but guess what? Now you're in college, so, right, like, yeah, it has to be within the rules of what's appropriate in your family. I've had lots of people say to me, well, you know, he's in college, what can I do? You know, they drink all the time, this is what the kids do. I don't know, I think you can have an expectation of what is appropriate for your kids. It's really not appropriate that your kids be out all night partying when they come home. They could go spend time with friends, but you want to think about the bigger picture of what's good health, what is self-care. It's not a good idea to be out partying all night when the whole family's coming the next day for Thanksgiving. It's just not smart. It's not taking care of yourself. It's not being kind to the family who wants to have a family celebration. You're allowed to put up boundaries about that. And I think these conversations should happen sooner rather than later. In fact, they probably should have been happening all along in all kinds of ways. But now that it's shifting, it would be a good conversation to have with your kids going away. Like, let's talk about what it's going to look like now when you know, this is an interesting summer. It's the summer before you go. You're going to be living at home. Can we talk about how we envision that being? I'm not saying come in with all these hard and fast rules. Just come in with, like, let's talk about what our life is going to look like now. Let's talk about what it's going to be like when you come home Thanksgiving, and to figure out what works for the family and what's the level of comfort for you as parents. It should not be all hands off, you know, and all, you know, the kid can do anything that they want suddenly that they're in college. They are part of a family that lives in a house that runs a certain way, and they should be expected to stick with those expectations of that family system. I'm not suggesting you suddenly, you know, that they have a 10:30 curfew or an 11:30 curfew. You want there to be some flexibility, but you want to feel like you still have a voice. They're coming into your home and living as part of your family. Anyone have pushback against that? Anyone can't stand that? Yes? Okay.
Some pushback. Yes. But my advice is just don't give up, because even his sophomore year he's coming home and something happened. I knew he was out with a friend and he stayed at the house, and I knew where he was, but I woke up the next morning, he wasn't there. And he came in wondering how it happened, and we have conversations, and he's just mad because you can't control me, and it's all about respect.
Yes.
And he's so good about checking in all the time, even if he's out late. So it's really kind of like, I always call him sort of the South freshman year. You know, like,
Right, but
so don't give up and keep setting those boundaries, because now he gets it.
Right, so again, that's content and context, right? The content is, where are you safe? The context is, how do you share that with us out of respect, right? Like, if you want to sleep at your friend's house, that's your business. Just tell us. Send me a text. Send me a text so that when I wake up, I'm not stressed out when I can't find you, because I expect that you're going to be there. Right, that's appropriate. That was a good point. Any other questions right now? I'm conscious of our time. We end soon, right? At 11? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Okay. I think it's a really nice conversation to have with your kids. What are their goals for themselves? What's their wish for these 4 years? And for you to think to yourself, what are your wishes for them? And for you to think really thoughtfully about that. Hopefully that wish is more than just a degree and a GPA, because this is an experience that is far more than a degree and a GPA. This is a really interesting life experience. And what is it you really hope they're going to learn about this next chapter of their life? And it's nice to have them verbalize it before they go in, and maybe even write it down and pull it out a year later, just to check in with them, or check in with them in December when they come home for winter break, in a nurturing way, not in a like, see, are you meeting your goals, right? Not like that. In a really nurturing, open-hearted way. And, look, I think parenting is so hard, and actually the older that I get, I think the harder it is, which is interesting. Someone said to me, when my kids were young, when your children are young, it is physically taxing. And as your children grow up, it becomes emotionally taxing. And I would say that is for sure. And I do not, I come to the table with a lot of education in this field and a lot of experience, and I will tell you, I think it's so hard as someone who works with families and kids and who has a lot of training. It's really, really hard. So you want to step into a new time of life where you can have a very interactive, open, collaborative time with your kids. You don't want to be the parent that's like, well, what'd you get on the chem test? Did you study? Rather, how's the major going for you? Are you liking it? Like, I know you were really into chem. Is it still good for you? Because if it's just all about the chem test, your kids are always going to feel judged. They're always going to feel like they're either disappointing you or disappointing, the chem department in their high school. I just actually heard a story. I was with a friend over the weekend, and her son was a major athlete in their school and headed to kind of being viewed for a few years to have a full ride, as his brother had, to a Division I school in football. And end of junior year, the kid ended up taking a voice class for his elective and fell hook, line, and sinker in love with it, and completely put the family in a tailspin. He was like, I actually don't want to play football at all. I want to go into musical theater. I've changed my mind. The coach was like, what? Are you kidding? And kudos to the kids and the parents. P.S. This kid is now in a musical theater program, looking like a football player. And good for those parents, because they were just really open. Because it wouldn't, could the kid have gone to a Division I and played? Yeah. Would his heart be singing? Probably not. So even that phrase, what makes your heart sing? Are your kids studying something that makes their heart sing, that fills up their soul? That's what the hope is for our kids. If they are just being driven by the career that's going to get them money, or the GP, or the class that's going to get them a GPA, or into a certain grad school, they are going to be misfocused, and ultimately it's going to catch up to them. I worked with somebody once in my practice years ago whose grandparent was a doctor, whose father was a doctor, who didn't even think, apparently, didn't even think about if he wanted to be a doctor, just went to college, went to medical school, and went on to become the highest, most amount of training that you can get in all of medicine. The field was like 10 extra years, and literally said, so there's this problem. It occurs to me I never really wanted to be a doctor, and I am trained to do nothing else, right? So this idea of not doing internal inquiry, you can get on this path of just robot doing what you think your parents want you to do, what you think your school wants you to do, without just thinking too much. So asking our kids those questions becomes very important. Asking them, is this joyful to you? Are you excited by this? If they feel like your bottom line is that you just want them to make a lot of money in 5 years, they might not have the space to think about what makes them happy because they are very money focused and they know if they go this road, they can get a job for that amount. And that will impact them later in their life. So having lots of open-hearted conversations, asking them what they want for themselves, what are their goals, how would they like their life to look? And you can ask them, how do you want your life to look socially? How do you want your life to look emotionally? How do you want your life to look academically? I want to talk about social media for a minute. We could have an entire day-long conversation, which we're not going to do. Something that I hear from many kids that are away and parents who are friends with their kids' friends on social media is, oh my gosh, they're having so much fun. They're having like the most amazing time in college. I see all these pictures. They're at all these parties. Do you see how great it is? All of that is not true. I mean, maybe it's a little true, but the preparing for the facade on social media with Instagram and Facebook is a really troubling part of our society. And when kids go to college, they are very vulnerable to this. I mean, what do you do when you're alone? You get on your phone and you look at everybody doing what they're doing, and you think that everything is great, and people make up all kinds of narratives and all kinds of stories about how inadequate they are. Oh my gosh, look at my friend and all her Michigan, let's just say Michigan garb. She's at all the Michigan games, she's having so much fun all the time. Meanwhile, what they don't know is this kid's exhausted. This kid's actually an introvert and putting themselves in all these situations. All this kid wants to do is go to the library, and she's pretending by putting logos all over her face and wearing these clothes and rah-rah, posing for these pictures. There's so much of this. There's so much envy and wishing, and I think this is so important to tell your kids. Do not try to disengage. It would be great if they could get it off their phone completely. Probably they're not going to do that. Could they get one off their phone? And to parents also, I have parents that will come in and say, you know what, my kid is not posting at all, and all their friends are posting. I'm kind of like, awesome. But they're anxious because they think that other kids are doing great and doing fine, and actually, I'm like, good for your kid. That's actually healthy. So to really be aware of the impact of your kid's experience with that. I also want to talk about Life 360. Does everybody know what that is? Anybody know what that is? It's like Find My iPhone, where you can see what your kid is doing and where they are going. This is a really big problem when your kid is in college. If you are tracking their every move, you will become mentally unwell. Really, you will become obsessed with what they're, oh my gosh, they didn't get back to the room till 2 o'clock in the morning. I think they have a 10 o'clock class and they didn't leave their room till 12. You're going to drive yourself crazy. And this is part of the job of your kid. This is part of their self-care and their life skills. And you tracking it does nobody any good. It's going to give you a stomach ache. It's not going to help you sleep. And it's going to take away from your kid learning these skills. There's so much of this going on right now. And look, if you want to have it on there as a safety mechanism, if you ever need to just find your kid or whatever, it's fine. But if you cannot control yourself, I would get it off your phone. Get that app off your phone, because it does not serve anybody well to be watching what they're doing. Yes?
I agree with that. There is a benefit to having, and I use to find my friends, is knowing, like, okay, if he's in class or in the library, I'm going to, like, text him or call him. If he's in his apartment, then, that's what I do with it. But
Right.
not to, like, say, oh, I removed it, but there is a benefit. So
Right.
if you can control yourself, is it?
I agree completely, but even you have to think about, like, is he here, is he there? Like, what's the harm in just texting him? He shouldn't be looking at his phone during his class, right? Do you know what I mean? Like, I get what you're saying.
Well, it'll do it, say, in class, so it's like, okay, well, if I can avoid that, it's not a big.
Yeah, but you're still like, first of all, I get this. And by the way, I do this sometimes. I just want to be, like, clear. I'm, like, in here with you guys. But I also want to say, it's their responsibility to figure out how they use their phones in their class or in the library. So if they're not supposed to be on their phones, let them turn down the volume and put it away. Because they're going to get texts and calls from other people. And when they're in the work world, they're going to get texts and calls when they're at work. And so always like, oh, I shouldn't.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean?
It's not about, like, I should. it's more like, okay, if I wanna.
If you want to actually have a conversation, yeah.
Conversation.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, it's
Yeah.
not like, oh, I should, it's more like, okay, I wanna talk to him. but
He
I
might
know
be available.
He's gonna text me on class, so
Yeah.
why just
Okay.
avoid that?
I got
That's
it.
what I'm saying.
I got it. There definitely is a benefit to it, but nothing, too much of anything can not be good. Yeah. Yes.
I have 2 older daughters, and they've actually done that to me. Now, I'm sure I have that device on my phone. I don't know how it works, but my kids know how it works. And sometimes they'll text me, "Oh, Mom, why didn't you tell me where you were in New York?" And I get really annoyed by that. So I can't imagine how annoyed they are.
Yes.
Because I get annoyed by, by my kids checking me out where I go, and I find it really annoying.
Yeah.
Incredibly, yes. So I'm sure they are
Yes.
the same way.
Yes.
And why would I want to know where they are?
Yes.
I mean, hell no.
Right.
Come on. I really don't.
And yes, anybody can take themselves out of it. I found it interesting when my son went to school. I was like shocked that he didn't take himself out. And the first day, I'll be honest. I mean, this is a few years ago. He's already doing. My husband and I, we didn't really talk about it. And then like that first night we went to bed, I was like, just so you know, he's in his dorm. He's like, I know. I mean, we were completely caught up, and I kept waiting. Like tomorrow, he's gonna like disengage it. He never did. And I think that that's because we never discuss it. We never say, where are you? He never, ever disengaged himself. And the reason we put it on in the first place was when he started to drive. That was why, just when he started to drive. We didn't want to be texting him or calling him when he was driving, coming home from some late night event. And that was it. So I agree. And you know what? I hate that too. My kids are like, I can't believe you were at Trader Joe's and didn't tell me you were going. And sometimes I unblock myself. When I want to be at Lord & Taylor by myself without anyone bugging me, I take myself out. I don't need everybody knowing where I am. You just said something really important, that we send a message that we don't trust our kids. And I think a conversation with our kids are, we expect to trust you. Set it up right off the bat. You're 18. You're going to college where you're going to have to live independently, and we expect to trust you. Put your expectation out there. We expect that you're not going to be binge drinking. I think that that is fair. You're not saying you cannot experiment socially. You're saying we expect that you're going to be doing these kinds of things. And the self-care idea, which this JED Foundation has a great kind of outline about that. Having conversations with your kids, like, look, you got to shower every day. You got to do your laundry once a week. You got just basic stuff that you may not realize how much you're impacting. If you're getting a cold, you need to get more rest. You need to pay attention. You shouldn't be going out partying if you've been hacking up, phlegm for 3 days. You have to make good decisions about your care, your bedtime routine. Sleeping on 6 hours is not good self-care. If you don't have a class till noon and you want to go to bed at 12, that's fine, but you got to be getting up, showered, and eaten before that 12 o'clock class. That is not unreasonable, and this is part of the next step of your life as a young adult going to live somewhat independently. Did you have a question? Yeah.
Do you ever do this format in front of kids?
I have.
Yeah, because I think it would be beneficial for them, to talk about sexual assault rather than coming from parents, than coming from someone like you who has seen it.
Yeah, we have.
Social media, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Hearing that from you as opposed to, me saying, oh, what they're doing, it's not really happening. They're not really that happy. They're, but coming from somebody like you.
I mean, we certainly talk about it when we speak to teens as a team, and I would say that all of us bring this up with the teens that we work with in our practice, for sure. We talked a lot. I don't know how many of you, we've had 2 kind of big events in the last 18 months. One, we showed the movie Angst at the New Canaan Library, and we showed the movie Like. Both the documentaries, Angst is about anxiety, Like is about social media, the impact of social media. And in both of those conversations, we certainly with the kids talked about not sexual assault, but a lot of this stuff about anxiety and social media and setting up boundaries. We had lots of those conversations. Yes?
We're coming to an end, so I just wanted to share 2 things with parents.
Can you just speak up a little?
I just wanted to share 2 things with parents. My son did not have good self-care. He got himself on, well, he didn't get himself on, but he let it go too long. So we did have a healthcare proxy, which is very important so you can get access to his medical care. But the advice is remember where it is, because he didn't have it. I thought he had it on him, he thought I had it on me, so that was a problem. The second thing that I think you should add possibly is political activism at school. Knowing how kids want to stand up for what they believe in, and knowing when they're in danger. And my son's school was a big school. They had a huge march. It was a group that had violence in the past. They shut down the bus station. You couldn't get to class. It was right before midterm, so all the kids are going crazy on both sides of the spectrum. They just wanted to get to class. He went across the picket line and calls me up, and I could hear it was just a mob. It was crazy. Just having a conversation, knowing to walk away. Like, please, I was calm me down, get Uber, because they had to get to a different campus and so forth. But I don't think that's talked about a lot. Because
It's a great thing to talk about right now.
Because it got to the point where this was a very dangerous situation. We felt that's what got her, but she escalated.
I think that is a great thing. It wouldn't have even occurred to me to bring this up in this conversation, but I think it's really smart. And that is a skill your kid needs to learn. Like, how do you talk about politics when someone has a different view than you? Teaching your kid, maybe there's certain hot situations that you just don't get engaged in if you're dealing with people that are really irrational. Maybe you just decide, there's places I can talk about it, I'm not going to talk about it here. And maybe certain clubs, if they're being kind of fueled by lack of compassion or rage, maybe I don't want to be in that club. I can still be engaged. I can still express my beliefs. And knowing, even in a roommate situation, you could live with someone who has very different political beliefs than you, and how can you have respect and have your own beliefs? How can you have a relationship with someone who thinks very differently than you, which I will tell you has been so much of my work in my practice over the last 3 or 4 years. How can you go to Thanksgiving dinner with your relative who thinks very differently than you about political beliefs?
Something happened. A girl saw he was trying to be a gentleman about something. She was in a feminist group and took it very thought it was being condescending.
You would open the door.
I don't know what it was, but specifically, but then she went on a media campaign to have expose him. So parents looking at legal actions, so it is really big out there. Like this.
It is, and I believe, yes, and I really believe in educating your kids about posting. I will tell you, I think that once it is out there, it is out there. And be very cautious about who is your audience. People don't even know that they have like 3,000 people that are their friends or that follow them. And you put that thing out there, depending on who it lands on, you should be very cautious and thoughtful about what you post. You just don't know where it will go, and it will always exist in some way. And this belief that, it disappears on Snapchat, anybody can screenshot anything. I mean, this business that I can send a naked picture of myself and no one will see it is an absolute untruth. The amount of kids that have been devastated by this is huge. Anybody can take a screenshot of any single thing. And that naked picture that you think you're sending to your boyfriend, all his fraternity brothers can see it. And to really have an active conversation with your kids about this. In a way, again, content, context. In a way to watch your tone, to not be really authoritarian. Look, this is what happens, and this is what you should know. Like, look, we just want to talk about some things that we've heard about, and we just want you to be aware. Very kind of open tone, so that they can possibly hear you. 2 more things I want to say. I think the idea of setting up meaningful conversations with your kids before they go to school is really important. Michelle and I were just talking about this in the office. Not like, we have to talk to you before you go to college. Not that. In 6 months, you're going to be moving away, and we just want to have like a few fun dinners with you, where we make sure there's space for us to talk about like the stuff that's going to come up. And I would make it fun dinners. I would make your kid's favorite meal when the other siblings aren't home. I would take them out for ice cream. I would take them to a restaurant they love. Make it a lovely environment. And maybe you have an agenda, not on a typed piece of paper that you're going to hand them, but maybe you come up with what are the things you want to talk about. I would say 5 20 to 30-minute conversations are better than 3 3-hour conversations. Don't make it this whole big intense thing, and to say, we've been thinking about some things that are important. We're not going to overwhelm you, but there's a few things we want to talk about over the next number of months. And to think about your own experience. Kids like hearing about their parents' own experience. They really appreciate it. Dig into yourselves and talk what it was like for me. That's a very helpful thing for your kids. What it was like when I went away, what my roommate was like. I mean, I went to college, and before I was in a room, a quad, before March, I was the only remaining roommate. Don't ask, that's a whole story. But I was the only remaining roommate. There was such chaos with the other people in my dorm. I mean, I'll actually tell you. One woman was date raped and left immediately. One woman was using crack. I didn't even know what crack was. Literally, I was like a small town girl from Western Pennsylvania. And I was like, well, what is, the dean called me to talk to me because this roommate was using crack. I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I did not even know what it was, obviously a long time ago. And the third roommate had mixed lots of meds and alcohol, and they were all gone by March. And I was living by myself. And I told my kids all about this experience. I was very open with them. And I'm sure you all have some college story, some great college story about someone that was really helpful, something that was really awful. Share it with them. Let them hear, let them know. Somebody just had a hand up. Somebody? Yes.
I had a great college experience, my husband did, but we do tell my daughter, and we tell our sons too, I mean, they're only freshmen in high school, but that freshman year is a really hard year. I mean, I remember calling my parents crying, like,
Yes.
professors, that, everyone's so intellectual. My parents were like, it's college, of course, buck up. But, they had some empathy, but my point is that it's hard to be a freshman.
It
Whether
is
you're a boy
really
or a
hard.
girl, and there's just a lot to figure out, and then you throw the social media in.
Oh.
And my parents also say that thank God there was no social media when we were in school, because they said, she
Yeah.
left and they didn't really think about it. She wasn't up in the middle of the night, she didn't worry about it until we came home for break, and, then we had to have some goals.
Right.
And we couldn't just come and go.
But I think having a really serious conversation with your kids about self-care before they go is very important, because that is why a lot of kids end up coming home. There's a book, it's an old book, it's from like the late 90s, 2000, called Emotional Intelligence. Some of you may know it, Daniel Goleman. It's a well-known book. And one of the things that he did in his research was he studied kids that dropped out of college. And it had nothing to do with their intellect at all, their academic intellect, their traditional intellect. And I think it was Harvard. I think it was kids who had gotten into Harvard, so kids who had enough smarts, who were able to interview, write essays, take the SATs, assuming that they really did that. They were, I'd like to think they did. So they got themselves in, but then within the first year, they failed out. And it all had to do with their emotional intelligence. They couldn't get along with their roommate. They were up all night partying. They had a girlfriend. They were sleeping over with the girlfriend every night, not sleeping at night. Poor self-care, blah, 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 blah. So that's where he started to talk about emotional intelligence. Or they didn't have skills to have meaningful relationships. They lacked compassion. They lacked the ability to be connected with others. And so all these reasons that emotional intelligence, he puts it as emotional intelligence, is emotional intelligence. I would say in this day and age, self-care is a little bit of a better statement. Emotional intelligence is also part of it. But that you can be an academic rock star. And if you're not taking care of yourself, it doesn't matter. You're not going to have success. The final thing I would say, it is a very personal journey for all of you as families, for your children, and I really believe in working as a family, working as parents, what is good for us. Some of the saddest times in my office is when I work with one or two parents who will say, oh God, like these are the weeks of the college, or no, someone said after the applications went in, they said, I'm just like not going anywhere public for the next 3 months. I cannot see anybody. The parent has so much angst about what's going to happen. Is it going to get in? Are they not going to get in? They had so much internal angst. So this is a number of issues. My job in the room is to work with this parent, but I can't imagine what it's like for this kid. These expectations are so high, the parent's so hyped up about what the answer is. To really protect your family, don't get too engaged with what everybody else is doing. I really believe man plans and the universe laughs. Here I am, I'm gonna tell you a funny ditty. Here I am, I have this practice, I work with this age group a lot. I was asked to do this presentation. I was like, oh, I could do that. 2 kids in college, I do this all the time. My second kid just took a medical leave for Lyme disease. She had 6 weeks left, and she's really sick with Lyme, and man plans, the universe laughs. You know, we all have our journey. I feel very sad for her. Today's a day I'm not tearing up about it. She's leaving all these, you know, second-term credits on the table. She had to take a medical leave. She can't do it. And we could have never imagined this. It's really a big bummer, but we got our, you know, we all got our journey. It's a very important lesson for her to learn in life. And we're not going to make her stay. I mean, we tried, to be honest, to make her stay. We tried. We were like, 6 weeks, there's 6 weeks left. Just finish. Just get C's. Just finish the quarter. She couldn't do it. She couldn't function. And again, open-hearted, compassionate, your kid's sick, recent Lyme case. You're not going to force her to stay. But not in our wishes and dreams. Believe me, I'm not thrilled walking around my community being like, guess what? Not, you know, I'm not having the same experience that everybody else is, but this is life. And to not get so focused on what everyone else is doing. Your kid will have their experience. Some kids are on the 6-year plan. Some kids are on the work, take 2 or 3 credits a term. There's no good or there's no bad. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with who have been on the 4-year plan, and then in this amazing graduate school 2-year plan, and then 5 years later they lose it because they haven't even thought about how they feel about anything. I just had a guy recently, a guy I really have such affection for, who is triple Ivy League educated, and I've worked with him on and off for a long time, and literally has no self-esteem at all. None. He has no self-esteem. 2 failed relationships, struggling in his life, and will actually say this to me. I can't believe what I look like on paper and how I feel inside. And so this is important stuff. These are important learning years on many, many levels. Yes. Yes.
One thing I was surprised about is freshman year. You can't really go in there and like looking for your best friends. It's kind of like the first semester was kind of like just go with who's around you. And then people who really become your friends might be very different people by the next semester.
That's exactly.
And you have to be willing. It's harder for some people to just go out and say, I don't really love these people or really even like them that much, but I just need to just hang out with them to get out there and to meet other people.
Yeah.
So
Such a
everything just kind of, changes up.
That's right.
As people settle in.
Yeah. You had a question?
I was going to just comment a couple of things that experiences that I had. So before my son went off to college, I tried to have that open-hearted conversation about, okay, what can we expect for communication? Like those were my exact words, just what we're talking about. Really open-hearted. I was like, well, how about Sundays at a certain time you call? He said, yeah, no, that's not happening. So he's like, I'm like, ah! So he's like, I'm not going to stop what I'm doing. Say, excuse me, I have to go talk to my mom. And I'm like, I totally get that. So he's like, I'll make a deal with you. I'll teach you how to Snapchat. Now I'm ridiculous on my phone. I have no clue. So he taught me to Snapchat. I can't tell you how much information I get from his little simple Snapchat. I would never tell him what I'm getting. I can tell him what he's doing, where he is, and it's fun, and we do it together. And the point is that I sort of let him drive that, and he wanted to make that break from me, which was fine, and I accepted that. And I also want to comment how I've seen such amazing growth from the time that he stepped away from our home and me and this community. I mean, he's loved it, but there's such amazing growth that happens between freshman year and now he's a junior.
Yeah.
And called me, FaceTimed maybe in the middle of the day yesterday just to catch up. And so
I could
don't
not
be
agree.
afraid.
Right, I could not agree more about the growth that's occurring when your kids leave to what will happen over those years. The one thing I would say about the communication is I do think it's fair for parents to say, look, we want to be connected to you when you're away, and we want to figure out what would make sense for you. He figured it out. He said Snapchat, but maybe you want to hear his voice. And you're allowed to hear his voice. You could say, okay, so can we just make sure every 10 days we talk? Every week we talk, every 2 weeks we talk. It's very personal. You guys got to figure that out. If your kid goes to school a year away, would it be all right? Could we like take you to breakfast every 6 weeks? You know, that's for you to figure out what with your kid, but to be very open, like our hope is that we're going to stay connected and we want to hear your voice and we want you to hear our voice. How could it look? You might say, well, of course I'm going to call you within every 10 days. Let's just see how it goes. And then it might be fine. But I think just really open-heartedly saying, like, this is our hope, you know. But, you know, he figured it out with Snapchat, and that sounds like it works great.
You do get closer to them in a way, you know.
Yeah.
And I heard, I read something once that really stuck with me. It's like, as parents, their job is to be the wall of the swimming pool. And they come to us and then they push away, but if we just stay there and be that wall for them to come and hang on when they need that, they do come back, you know, and then they swim away for a while and then they do come back. I'm talking emotionally.
Yeah. And I will often talk about the metaphor of a surfboard. Like, how can you be a steady surfboard, knowing that for your kids, this first year of school, there's a lot of ups and downs. Can you be a steady surfboard? Can you keep yourself steady and available when they need you? The one last thing I would say that truly helps me in my own life daily, that I say to my clients all the time, I say this at least once a day in my work, in my practice. We are all of you as parents, your children, we're all in the middle of an unfolding story. There are pages and chapters to come. What's the best environment for this to unfold? And what is happening today is not going to be what's happening in 6 months. And what's happening in 6 months is not what's going to be happening in 3 years. It's all unfolding. So can we be patient and mindful in the present moment, to be thoughtful about what's around us, to let it just unfold? Because we don't know what's going to be. You know, my kid that just had to come home from medical leave was supposed to be the rock star, highly academically achieving kid. And she is that, but not currently. You know, so we have to adjust to a new normal. And it happens all the time with people. Kids come home for mental health. Kids come home with sudden learning issues. Kids come home because they're really homesick. And these kids go away, they are young. Lots of kids go away, they are 18. 17, they are young. These are young brains. If you know anything about teenage brain development, they are young. The years between 17 and 21 are huge brain development. That's why they want to push the drug use to later and the alcohol use to later. This brain development time is tremendous. So everyone has their own story. And I would pay attention internally if you find that you're having internal judgment of yourself, of your parenting, of your child. Do you feel embarrassed in your community? Do you feel ashamed? Pay attention to that and work on it. Talk to a friend, talk to a therapist, just talk to yourself about what's happening there. Because I see so many parents that are judging themselves in this moment in time. Oh, my kid I'm so embarrassed, my kid didn't get into this great school. Oh, my kid's grades aren't good. My kid came home, they gained 10 pounds. This is your kid's journey. You know, like if it impacts you so intensely, get curious inside yourself about that. That's information about you. You know? Any other questions? I hope this was helpful. I hope so. You're welcome. I just want to say one more thing. So in the packet, I included some articles, I think just one article by Frank Bruni. I love Frank Bruni. I think he is writing so many great things. I've read snippets of his book. I've not read the whole book, but I think he's so on the money. So I would recommend reading a lot of his stuff. And again, the jedfoundation.org has so many great things. So many great things.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
oh, my
Alyssa.
pleasure.
Before everyone escapes, if you've missed it when you came in, on that table are two handouts. One are just some casual tips. Sue Holland took the time to put them together, just some things that might help you navigate some of the financial, legal, sort of things that you need to know because your child is legally becoming an adult or has become. And then the other one is a HIPAA health care proxy, just an idea of what those look like. And then I think I was asked by somebody to mention post-prom. Another plug for, please participate in whatever way you can in post-prom. If you can make a donation or get involved, the post-prom committee would be very grateful. And the volleyball. Yes, written report, vote, early and often. Linda?
Disclosure of parents, what was this?
This one in the back, that's a model, that's a sample. I actually got that from the Jed Foundation, that's a sample. But what's gonna happen when your kid gets accepted into their school, it's gonna be included in part of those documents. So the goal for everyone, if you want to be engaged in your kid's life in this way, is to set it up in the beginning. When your kid is accepted and they start doing all that portal stuff, say it then. We just wanna be able to access, I wouldn't say we wanna have access to all your grades, but we want to be able to access all your health information, any information we need, so I don't have to bug you, and so we can, be included in this process. And then there's something you sign, I think, and you have to put in your email, and you can be included. I mean, probably all schools do it differently, but with both of my kids, it was through the portal at the time that they were going to say anything about it.
But you have to say it actively,
It's not automatic.
it's not automatic, you act out.
That's how it's for healthcare proxy, right?
What? Healthcare as well.
Healthcare proxy, the healthcare proxy, right, is that?
Yeah, that's not true.
Say, God forbid, they're hospitalized or something, and they're.
Right, that's separate from the
With
school.
them, it has to be on their phone. You go to a different doctor, it doesn't matter if you've got it back at home, they gotta have it right there. Otherwise, it's worthless. You can't file it in advance.
And there's a lot that happens in the fall, a lot of forms and lots of reports, and so if you can get anything front-ended in the summer, or, shortly before they start, it's going to be a little bit more organized.
And what I didn't talk about, sorry, a lot of colleges have a really fabulous center for student support. If your kid has a diagnosed learning issue or health issue, some of these places are unbelievably supportive, incredible. I just had to work with them myself with getting my kid excused from Lyme. But if your kid has celiac, if your kid has allergies, if your kid has learning issues, some of these centers are unbelievable and can offer tremendous support. They can offer counseling to your kid. You can go check in with someone weekly. If your kid has a learning issue, they can go meet with someone and talk about organizational skills. If your kid has a physical disability, that's where they would arrange for rides. If your kid has migraines and needs to have a certain kind of roommate, that's where you request it. They can do a ton of supportive stuff at most of these Center for Student Support.
Technical detail, we taped today's discussion. If anybody would have any objection to, what we shared here, please let us know, and we'll make sure that does not get aired until Julie or I or whatever. So we just thought, since it would be valuable to larger audience, we could have that. Okay, so feel free to also mention it to any friends who couldn't hear.
And also, the Scholarship Foundation is telling congratulations, graduate signs, so check out the website, a long sign.
Yeah.